I'm Julene, and welcome to my Skywatch blog for the week of November 11th through November 18th. This week we have Mercury reaching greatest eastern elongation. That is the furthest distance that Mercury can be from the Sun, and we also have the Leonid meteor shower peaking. I want to talk a bit about Mercury's greatest eastern elongation. What I have here, these lines, this green line is the ecliptic plane. This red line represents the celestial equator. Now, the celestial equator is Earth's equator extended out into infinite space. Tilted at 23 degrees and 26 or 27 minutes from the celestial equator is the ecliptic plane. This is the path that the planets travel in the sky. This, when we measure east and west along here, it gives us our zodiacal longitude, our zodiacal position, which is celestial longitude. When we measure north and south of here, it is celestial latitude. Okay, and the reason that these are 23 degrees and 26 minutes apart from each other is because that is the tilt of Earth on its axis. And this becomes separated to the maximum point at 0 degree Capricorn of the tropical zodiac when we have the winter solstice, and also at the summer solstice of 0 degrees Cancer in the tropical zodiac, and they intersect at the equinoxes, and then they separate out angularly from there. So we can see here that even though we know that Venus and Mercury are in the same degree of the zodiac, Mercury is below Venus because Mercury is at a lower celestial latitude. They have the same degree of celestial longitude, but Mercury has a lower celestial latitude. This is also south declination. So I want to take this to a chart so that you can see what I'm talking about here in our little table. This is, I want to do this one first. Okay, so this is a map of the sky for November 11th at 5:30 p.m. This is the same thing we were looking at. I have this in the sidereal zodiac. We can see that both Mercury and Venus are at 17 degrees of Scorpio, but Mercury is at 2 degrees south 41 latitude, whereas Venus is at 044. So Venus is much closer to the ecliptic by about 2 degrees. Okay, so that is why Venus is appearing above Mercury instead of on top of Mercury in the night sky. Now, Mercury reaches its greatest eastern elongation on November 14th at 3 a.m. This is the furthest Mercury can be from the Sun. At this point, the degree of orb between these two is going to be 22 degrees and 36 minutes. That is as far as Mercury is going to get from the Sun in this trip it makes around the Sun. Now, Mercury can be 28 degrees from the Sun. That is its maximum greatest eastern elongation or greatest western elongation. But just because it can travel 28 degrees from the Sun does not mean that it's going to every time. So greatest eastern elongation means that Mercury is as farthest east from the Sun as it can be. We know that when a planet is east of the Sun, it is going to be visible after the Sun sets because the Sun is going to cross the descendant first. Mercury and Venus will not be visible in the morning because the Sun is going to rise before them. So you can tell as a planet is nearing, its eastern or western elongation where it's going to be visible in the morning or the evening. Now look at these speeds. Mercury is starting to slow to station. On November 11th, Mercury's speed was actually 107. It has slowed down to 101. Venus has remained consistent at 115. Now when we go to the end of the week, we're going to see that Mercury is really slowed down to 041. Venus is only slowed slightly with a speed of 114. And look, now Venus is almost 2.5 degrees ahead of Mercury. So we're going to watch Venus pull ahead of Mercury this week. And we are also going to watch Mercury slow to station and start to come closer to the Sun. Right here, Mercury happens to be 21 degrees and 55 minutes from the Sun. So you see that it's closer now than it was at its greatest eastern elongation. Okay, so back to the night sky. Here we are on the 11th at 5:30. This is tonight, Friday night. 5:45, both planets will still be visible. By 6 o'clock, Mercury will be set and Venus will follow shortly after, and by 6 o'clock a bunch of other stars will pop into view in the sky. Depending on how much light your city has will depend how many of these are popping into view. So I'm going to take this back to 5:30 so that we can watch the planets through the week. Okay, now pay attention to these because Venus is really going to pull ahead of Mercury this week. There's the 12th, 13th, 14th. Mercury right here is that it's the day that it reaches greatest eastern elongation. Now we're going to watch the separation. There's the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th. See how much faster Venus is moving than Mercury, and Mercury is actually slowing down, so the Sun is catching up to it, making that orb a bit slower. Now back to Friday, we're going to turn our gaze here over to the eastern horizon, and Jupiter will be rising. At this point it will have already risen, so you can find Jupiter in the east, you know, even during sunset if you know right where to look. So hopefully this will help. Jupiter and Venus are bright enough to shine through, you know, if you know where to find them. If not, as soon as the Sun begins to darken the skies, as soon as it starts to set, you'll be able to see them pop into view. So here's Jupiter traveling through the constellation Aries for the week. That's the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th. Jupiter hasn't moved much relative to its spot here, but each night it's going to be a bit higher above the eastern horizon. Now Mars is going to be the next planet to rise, so I'm going to advance this ahead hour by hour as soon as I go back to Friday. Okay, here we go. The moon will rise around 6:30, and Mars, I went way too far ahead. Mars is going to rise about 1 a.m. Oh, maybe even sooner. Oops. Yeah, 12:45. 12:45, Mars will rise. Now, Mars is here in the constellation Leo, so as you're looking for Mars, you can also look for the Leonid meteor shower. Now, meteor showers are named for the constellation that the radiant comes from. The radiant is the apparent origin of the shower. So we want Leo to be fully above the horizon to start watching for the shower. Leo will be fully above the horizon by 2:15, and this shower actually peaks on the 18th. So here's the night of the 18th. We've got the moon and Mars. Now the moon tends to hinder the amount of meteors that we see. Okay, so it'll be more difficult to see the shower because of the moonlight. Now, meteor showers happen when Earth passes through dust, debris, rocks, ice left behind on the trails of comets. And then Earth passes through this dust trail left behind by the comets, and we see meteors, because what happens when we pass through Some of this dust and debris comes into our atmosphere, and our atmosphere burns them up. So the shooting star effect that we see is our atmosphere burning up the dust and debris left behind by comets. This particular comet, the Leonids, happens when the Earth passes through the remnants of comet 55P Tempel-Tuttle. And we can see about 20 per hour that will enter our atmosphere at a speed of about 44 miles a second. Okay, so they come in pretty quick and the Earth burns them up. If they happen to land on Earth, then they're called a meteorite. But while they are in the sky, they are meteors. So we may or may not see this 20 because the moon is going to interfere, but it's certainly something to, to try to look at and try to see. Now this shower is active from November 6th through the 30th, but the peak when we're traveling through the midst of this comet's trail happens on November 18th. So about 2:15 a.m. until sunrise, Leo will be fully above the horizon and you will be able to notice that. Now back to the 11th and we'll watch for Saturn to rise. Saturn is traveling in the constellation Virgo near Spica, and Saturn is going to rise here about before 5:30. This is 5:30. There's Saturn and Spica. It's the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th. Okay, so this is the morning sky. I'm going to go ahead and bump this to 6 a.m. And if you're out at 6 a.m., this is what you will see for all of the planets in the morning sky. So there's Saturn in the east-southeast. We've got Mars close to due south, not quite. Due south is over here at the meridian. So just east of that. And then setting over here, Jupiter will have just set. Let's find the set time for Jupiter. About 5:15. Okay, so you've got to be up before 5:30 to see Jupiter, but after 5:30 until sunrise, you will be able to locate Mars and Saturn. Earlier I mentioned that these, the ecliptic and the celestial equator intersect at 0 degrees Libra in the tropical zodiac. So this is 0 Libra of the tropical zodiac, which is located in the constellation Virgo. So there's the tour of the night sky for this week. Tune in next week. We're going to have the moon at perigee, we're going to have Mercury station, and we're going to have a partial solar eclipse. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.